Welcome to another episode of the Flats Nation podcast. And a big shout out to Brother Dave Fader down in Amarada for the awesome music. You can check out more of Dave's phenomenal work on davidfader.com. Well, today we have my friend, the Queen of Conservation and the Director of the CCA of Florida Star Tournament with us, Captain Leiza Fitzgerald. Welcome aboard Flats Nation, and congratulations on the recent award induction into the Florida Sports Hall of Fame. That is simply awesome. Can you give me a brief history of Captain Leiza?
Oh, gosh. Well, then that gives away my age, Dave. So, no, I will. I'd be happy to. Gosh, I've been fishing or fishy ever since I was a little girl. My dad was in the Navy, a commander stationed at Key West. And my first real job was catching bait off of the Navy pier with my brother and selling bait. So I guess that's really how I got started, going out with my dad and seeing how just amazing fishing was. Moving forward, we traveled with him as he was stationed in different areas and finally came back to Florida, bass fishing every weekend and as often as I could all the way through college. And then when I got my degree in marketing and public relations, I actually had thought initially I would be a marine biologist. I started my college time thinking that's what I was going to do. And
sure, we all watched a lot of Jacques Cousteau.
That was it. Jacques Cousteau. I just knew that was what I wanted to do. However, my dad was a wise man and he said, you won't make a lot of money. You'll have to go through a lot of school and get more than just a bachelor's degree. You'll have to get a master's in order to ever be well paid. And so marketing and public relations became my avenue of getting my bachelor's degree. And I went into business and finance and the advertising world. And just really, after years and years of being in that and then coming to a roadblock with my husband's business time and now my ex-husband, I knew there had to be something more for me. I was so stagnant, and I was with my dad at Rodman, and we were bass fishing, and we're sitting there talking, and my dad says, so what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I said, gosh, Dad, I don't know. I don't know. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I chuckled, and I said, this is what I want to do, Dad. I want to be able to fish and enjoy my life. And he said, well, you're a smart woman. Figure it out. And well, look where I am today.
It's true. Phenomenal.
I know so many people say, God, you have an awesome job. But it took me a while to get here. I worked for a private sporting plantation. I worked through corporate sports marketing first and helped create the World Sailfish Championships. Many really great fishing tournaments, and then left there to work for the Gilchrist Club. And then after 13 years of being there and getting them to a level where they no longer needed my services, I actually segued right into working for CCA. And I almost didn't go to work for them. And CCA, just so people know, that's the Coastal Conservation Association of Florida. And I almost didn't go to work for them because I had interviewed for a position with the University of Florida as their foundation director.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
For IFAS, for the Agricultural Institute. And I really, the day that I was to accept that position, Brian Gorski called me and said, hey, I understand that you're on the market. And I said, well, not really, because I'm accepting a job today at noon. He said, before you accept that job, could you please give us an opportunity? Here's what we're thinking. and we think you might be a great fit for it. I guess, as they say, the rest is history. Yeah, I interviewed with them, and then I'm going on my 11th year.
It's been that long?
It's been that long.
Well, I know you were on the Redfish Tour events because you and I met one time running Screaming Reels, High Heels. I love that name, by the way. How long were you actually on the various?
I think I started on the Redfish Tour in 1999, maybe 2000. I knew that I wanted to be a professional angler, and I had to figure out a way to do it.
Sure.
And so being a marketing and public relations person, I loved to fish, but I didn't know how to get started. I cultivated a lot of really good people in the industry, Captain Jeffrey Page, other individuals who, C.A. Richardson, Greg and Brian Watts, all these people who I had run into, and I was able to become a Ranger Pro staff. And the first year, Mercury picked us up. So I think I was on the Redfish circuit for almost 7 or 8 years, but I had been a guide that entire time. I wrote for the St. Pete Times for Terry Tomlin, did a lot of really great things throughout the career. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. We'd always been, we finished well in every tournament after our first year. Our first year, we zeroed in every tournament, but we stuck with it. Right. And perseverance paid off. And that next year, we went to the national championships, almost won first, but got disqualified for a fish that was too big. We were sitting in first place. We had a lot of learning to do in those tournaments. It was hard because, we were the team that every other team wanted to beat. Who wants to be beat by a girl?
That's right. Exactly.
Fish
don't care. I say that all the time. They don't know who's out there in the rod.
The fish don't, but let me tell you what, your competitors sure do.
Yeah, that's true.
And, it was a lot of fun, a lot of really great people. We accomplished some things that we never thought we would do in the ESPN tour. We were ranked one of the top all-star teams in the country, actually ranked out of 200 teams. We were ranked 11th, and there were 25 all-star teams. We were number 11, and the only women ranked in the all-star team. So we had some really, really amazing accomplishments. And, we weren't wearing pink. We weren't wearing skimpy outfits. We were the real deal. We really put in the time. We pre-fished. We slept in the back of my excursion. We worked off of a very tiny, small budget. We ate dollar meals from Wendy's while everybody else was going out for steak dinners. Marilee and I were sitting in the back of my excursion. My dad had rigged it up for us. We weren't staying in hotels. We were sleeping in the back of my truck so that we could travel to Texas and Louisiana to fish these tournaments. We didn't have the budget everybody else had.
Interesting. I personally didn't know that because when we used to chat and stuff at the various Redfish events, I remember you guys being as successful as you were. I didn't realize that discrepancy between you and the other teams like CA and Ray, Mike Anderson, and Tommy Derringer, and all the other ones that I remember.
They were very cordial to us. But think about it. We were on the same posse, the Ranger posse.
Right.
But none of those guys really worked with us. We were on our own. We had to find our own fish very rarely. And I'm going to say with rare exception, were we ever thrown a bone. And if we were, it was either CA that threw us the bone, Brian Watts, some of the other anglers like that. Captain Mike and a few others. I will tell you, Greg DeVault and his dad, there were a few teams that would say, hey, you might want to look in this area. Never gave us an exact spot.
Sure.
But might have given us indications where we could find fish because we were going to areas we knew nothing about.
And without the tools that we have today to even electronically.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so without looking and knowing the tides and all that stuff was about the only thing that you would have is knowing what the local tides were going to be. But the high resolution photography.
But yeah, Google Earth, what was that?
Yeah, really. What was that?
Nowadays, the technology is so exceptional. The fish don't pretty much stand a chance,
No, you can pretty much set up a pattern pretty quickly if you spend a little bit of time there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You got your start at CCA.
No, actually, my start into the fishing foray, I was still working for corporate sports marketing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I only got my position with CCA 11 years ago.
Okay.
So when I started out in the fishing industry, I was a member of CCA. I've been a member of CCA for over 20 years, but I did not start working for them until 2014. So I was already past my guide time frame in my life and already past my Redfish tour and all of that. I had retired from all of that and now was working for the Gilchrist Club. And actually, when I retired from tournament fishing, it was 2000, I think it was 2006 or 2007. And I continued to work for the Gilchrist Club and then went to work for CCA.
And what was your original position with the CCA? Is this same position that you have now, or?
Yep, they hired me to come in and restart the star competition. They had a star competition, I think about when they hired me 10 years prior to that, and it just was not successful. They wanted to bring me in and really create something that was unique. And I wanted to create something unique to Florida. There are star competitions in other state chapters of the Coastal Conservation Association. It is not just a Florida organization. It's a national organization founded back in 1977. But it's when they asked me to do this, because of what I saw the future of fishing heading towards, I could not see anything but a catch photo format for this competition and the magnitude of this competition. I saw by looking at what Texas and Louisiana did, the number of fish that were brought to the weigh scales, and I just was not comfortable doing that in the state of Florida.
Interesting on that format change. Now, are they still in Texas and the other states? Are they transitioned over to a catch photo release, or are they still bringing them to the scale?
They're working on it. It has not completely gone to a catch photo format, but as more and more pressure gets put on our fisheries, they are seeing the light and working on figuring out how to implement a catch photo format for their tournaments.
That's great. And what was that tipping point, Leiza, when you just said, we just got to help get this madness under control? Was it the fact that the various Redfish Tour events were having difficulty surviving, or just simple observation of what was happening in the ecosystem? What was that tipping point?
I think it was, I don't think there's ever really a perfect storm. I think it was the imperfect storm that really made me feel this way. As I said, I worked for corporate sports marketing, putting together these huge tournaments for sailfish and helping different organizations put together these charity events. And I realized that with the number of people moving to the state of Florida, the way that our fisheries were going, what I had seen change, I was now working at the Gilchrist Club and taking people to the Cedar Key area and all of that area, which was a pristine fishery at the time. Cedar Key, Swanee, Horseshoe Beach, all of that area. But I was seeing a change, and I was seeing a loss of a sustainable resource. And when CCA came to me, I realized that's why I was looking at IFAS, because I thought maybe I could make a difference there in their departments. But when CCA came to me, it was almost like an epiphany when I started hearing what they were wanting from me to try and accomplish. And I realized this is my opportunity to create a legacy and to create something so special for the state of Florida and for CCA. You know, they were giving me that foundation. The organization in Florida has been around since 1985 and is a nonprofit organization. And they were giving me the opportunity to make recreational anglers aware of what was happening. And if we didn't do it starting 10 years ago, and if we didn't make people aware of what was going on, we were going to see a significant demise in our fisheries. And although we are seeing a lot of collapsing ecosystems, they're not fully collapsed, and we're having the opportunity through CCA and our relationships to start rebuilding a lot of the areas that could have been totally destroyed.
And for those who are unfamiliar with the various issues or the single issues, since we have a lot of visitors on Flats Nation from around the world, and I don't like to even use the word, but what is the real nemesis here conservation-wise? Is it water quality? Is it loss of habitat? What are you seeing? Because you're on the front lines of it every day.
So is a multitude of things. And my opinion is not that of Coastal Conservation Association. And I honestly do not think that it is a popular opinion by many. I believe that it is the lack of understanding and concern by individuals for their environment. And it trickles down, and it starts at the top. It starts with our politicians, and it starts with greed. It starts with those individuals who don't have a concern for where they build homes. They fill in critical habitat that are headwaters of rivers and creeks, and all of that leads right into our Atlantic and our Gulf of Mexico. I think it is individuals who are politicians and bureaucrats who are in our communities, who manage the counties and cities. It is those who manage our environment. So oftentimes decisions are made based on profitability and not on consequences from that decision. And I mean things such as our canals and waterways being sprayed for invasive weeds and grasses, our lakes being sprayed, our zoning commissions changing from a rural zoning area to an urban zoning area and changing the water flow of Florida. Thousands of people are moving into the state of Florida, and our government and our decision makers are not making good decisions that affect our fisheries and our wildlife. they're making the decision based on those people moving into our state.
Right. Well, that's part of the tagline that we started on Flats Nation, the article that I created, "No fish, no Florida." I mean, it's amazing how large recreational fishing is in the state of Florida. And that's just recreational fishing. It's not commercial, which is on top of that. And how big of an economic driver it is.
I mean, if you just look at the number of people that come to the state of Florida for vacation, they come to the state of Florida to recreate on our coastal waters and on our bodies of water, on our beaches, to go fishing. And if we don't have those, think of the hundreds of millions of people that will be out of work and hundreds of millions of dollars that we will no longer have available in our coffers for what we need for our state. It's a shame, but each and every one of us are guilty. I can't say that there's one thing. You have to have great habitat in order to have clean water. You have to have clean water in order to have great habitat. You have to have fish populations in order to have good habitat. I mean, if you look at what certain species of fish do and certain species of crustaceans do for our habitat, it's imperative that it's a symbiotic relationship of all of these different species making up what is a healthy estuary. And it's going to take a lot of work throughout the entire state. There's not just one place in the state of Florida that needs attention. The entire state and almost every coastal area has some sort of condition that needs to be addressed by the FWC, by the county, by the state, and we need to continue to address it. There are no instant fixes. There's no wave of that magic wand.
No.
No.
Going on too long.
There are so many things that need to be done. And there are a lot of different organizations that are all working on these things, but we all really have to find ways to work together and not work against one another.
Well, I agree. Strength in numbers.
Yep.
Very much so. What was the biggest hurdle to overcome other than funding at the CCA of Florida? And we don't have to go too far back historically on that, but what have you seen? Is it memberships? Is it sponsors? What is...
So what I honestly think is the biggest issue with Coastal Conservation Association and our hurdle is when people think of the word conservation, they think, oh, we're closing down everything to fishing. Oh, exactly. It's all about reducing limits. Oh, it's all about taking something away from us when we talk about conservation. And that is not
really wise use. That's all it is.
You're exactly right. Conservation is the wise management and use of our marine resources, of our land, of all of the things that we wish to conserve. We're not about taking things away. And in fact, CCA has been the organization and the advocate for keeping open many of the fishing areas that other organizations have fought to close. Fishing closures all over the state of Florida are requested almost at every FWC meeting.
I mean, hook and line fishing just doesn't make that big of a difference. You and I both know that. You can go through a place and you can drag nets and stuff through it, and you can take out so much so quickly. It's amazing. So, I mean, it's the goose that's laying the golden egg here in Florida is recreational fishing. So to shut it down, of course, you've heard me and Mike and others, we get on our soapbox about that all the time, the discrepancy between.
Well, and we are the voice of recreational anglers. So what we actually need, and where I think we have our shortfalls, is membership.
Head count. I agree.
Your voice as an individual combined currently we have nearly 20,000 members. But could you imagine if we had just 1% of the licensed recreational anglers in Florida? We'd have 200,000 members if we had 1%. We really need to be aware of what's going on.
Tell me about the original battle plan or bullet points that were enacted for the CCA of Florida when it was brought together and how those were executed. I mean, I remember very well the net ban. That was a phenomenal job that the CCA basically took point on. What else have we seen that needs to be addressed?
There are so many different initiatives that CCA has taken a stance on. We have, going back so far, we've been very instrumental in the Modern Fish Act, in the modernization of recreational fisheries management. It was helping to improve America's federal waters and promote conservation of our marine resources and to spur the economic growth we had. Some of the other things that we've worked very closely on and we prioritized, and although it didn't appear that way, it was the Everglades restoration efforts, the SERP and the SEF projects. What we were trying to make sure is that we got passed into law that these projects that were already initiated would continue to be completed, because just having one initiative, which was an STA south of Lake Okeechobee, was not the end-all be-all. We needed to make sure that all of the other issues were in place. And it wasn't just about water going south. It was water going east and west. You've got the Caloosahatchee, and you've got, the St. Lucie River. Those waters needed to be protected as well. And then think about all of the water that drains into Lake Okeechobee. We needed to make sure that those waters, when they were brought into Lake Okeechobee, were also clean. So we were talking about needing STAs not only south of Lake Okeechobee, but north, east, and west. So those were some of the critical issues as far back as 2017. Some of our habitat restoration projects that we looked at were living shorelines and oyster reef restorations in Mosquito Lagoon. We wanted to have successful partnerships over there. We've worked very closely to increase the oyster deployment over in Mosquito Lagoon. And then started a program with Blair Wiggins. Blair and I together were able to now work on a clam deployment over in the lagoon and work with the different governing bodies to clean the waters that drain, not only the canals, but getting new catch retention as water comes off of the many road systems, and working with the municipalities to work to change the septic tanks. There are so many different programs that we've been working on. Another one of the programs that we've worked on is implementing barotrauma devices to reduce dead discards offshore and nearshore. So there's a lot of different programs that we have worked on. But some of the biggest ones for CCA Florida have been the offshore and nearshore reefs, our oyster bed renourishment. If you're down near Charlotte County, you will get to see in Turtle Bay, there's over 40 tons of oyster shell that's been deployed back into Turtle Bay, and it has living oysters now growing on it. And that Turtle Bay oyster bar that was almost completely gone is now a growing, living, viable reef again.
No, that's great. And I know oyster beds, they're just redfish condominiums. Everything gets attracted to them. It's just amazing how much of the underlying foundation of the ecosystem on the flats and stuff is based upon oysters. It really is. And the fact that they can't live in pure salt water. So you have to have a little bit of freshwater influx.
Oh, yeah.
For them to survive. So it's, no, I love that part. I follow that, as you and I have discussed, about the rebuilding of those oyster beds. That's critical. It's very critical. And I think to go hand in hand with that, I think our next effort needs to be with getting some more mangroves planted.
Well, we actually are planting mangroves December the 12th down in the Naples area. We're doing a huge mangrove replanting in I'm trying to remember the name of the Delano. Let me see here. I believe it is.
Now, is this a more recent development, Leiza, with the mangrove?
No, we've been planting mangroves for quite some time. We've been the Delano Wiggins State Park is where we will be doing that on December 12th. We've been working on mangroves and have just gotten even more involved with the mangroves with Duke Energy. We have a restocking program that we've been doing for the last 3 years with Duke Energy for the restocking of redfish, spotted sea trout, and snook. And that has been a huge program for CCA Florida. We have restocked over 280,000 redfish that have been released in the coastal waters of Florida.
It's just great. I mean, I wrote an article about it. That effort is just phenomenal.
You know, that effort, I was instrumental in releasing the 1 millionth redfish into Tampa Bay with FMRI, Florida Marine Research Institute, and Governor Jeb Bush back many, many, many years ago. Yes. And that was a program that was stopped. However, the fish that they were releasing were they were about an inch long. The fish that CCA Florida is releasing is anywhere from 8 to 12 inches. And on the west coast of Florida, each coastal county got between 25 and 30 fish that were between 25 and 27 inches.
So definitely breeding stock.
That's what we wanted to do. So to really say how many millions of redfish were released into the coastal waters, I'm not 100% certain, because each of those big redfish spawn millions of little redfish. Another program which is near and dear to my heart, and which I personally implemented and take my weekends to do, is I use our fisheries tanks that we use to release all of our 8 to 12 inch redfish. I have been working with redfish tournaments along the east and west coast of Florida that were tournaments that required you to bring a fish to the weigh scale, and they didn't care how it came in. I have gotten those tournaments to convert, and starting with baby steps, into live weigh-ins where they bring their fish in alive. I provide an incentive to those anglers who bring their fish in alive. We keep them in oxygenated tanks, and then I take these fish back out to the local waters and release them.
Oh, that's great.
And on the east coast of Florida, I'm up to over 1,200 tournament-sized redfish. So those redfish are anywhere from 23 to 27 inches, and I release those back into the coastal waters. And then on the west coast of Florida, I'm right now just over 900 redfish that have been released back into the coastal waters that were brought to me alive and I released. Oftentimes when they get released into a freshwater system or they get released into an area where there are predators, heavy predation, they don't survive. So we try to put them back into areas where we know they'll be able to survive.
That's great. Without going into great detail, what is the primary source of funding for the CCA of Florida? Is it membership? Is it merchandise sales? Is it donations? What is that mix? Do you know?
So our CCA fosters relationships and grants with corporations and other organizations. And it really, those corporate partners, bring in a large source of our funding. Currently, and as we speak in this podcast, we've parlayed since 2010 over $1 million that has been provided and raised by corporate America, and we parlayed that to over $9.2 million in habitat restoration that we've done throughout the state of Florida. So I would have to say it probably would be twofold. It would be our corporate partnerships, but then it is our fundraising banquets that we have. And that's how we raise our monies to be able to do the habitat restoration work that we do. That $9.2 million through the Building Conservation Trust, through many of our corporate sponsors like Maverick Boat Group, like Yamaha, Duke Energy, many of our large organizations, Alta Equipment, Realtree Fishing, Engel Coolers. There are so many, and you can go to our website and see all of these large corporate partners. All of them are in support of our organization and support our banquets as well.
Right.
But if you're not familiar with the CCA Florida license plate, there is a conservation license plate with a redfish tail on it.
It's one of the better tags out there, too. I like it.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And $25 of every tag goes directly to CCA. And that $25, the state allowed us to use a portion of it for habitat restoration and then a portion of it for administrative. And CCA Florida felt so strongly about this that we've chosen not to use any of those funds for any administrative. All of the funds raised from the license plate go directly to habitat restoration. And this year, we have some significant initiatives in 2024 that are ahead of us. So there is a lot of really great projects and ongoing and so forth projects that we have for 2024 that I think everyone will be thoroughly impressed with.
I bet the CCA of Florida has some huge legal bills to pay. Who's helping? I mean, we have to face facts. I'm sure that like every conservation group or any group period, there's always the detractors out there. There's always the haters. Who's helping with those legal efforts? And feel free to shout out to the firm or the staff attorneys that are doing that. But I can't help but think that somebody's not loving the CCA and they're taking pot shots at you guys.
Well, every year, just about, the net ban issue comes back up on the docket in legislation, saying that it is, we're taking away individuals' rights to make a living, and so many different unconstitutional, so many different ways that we have our commercial fisheries trying to get around that net ban. And we constantly fight that and so many other issues. And yes, significant legal bills. And it is a shout out, though, to every single individual who's a member. It's a shout out to every corporate partner that participates with us. I mean, if you were just to look at some of our corporate partners, it's just amazing the companies that support CCA Florida as an organization. And I can't thank our statewide sponsors enough. As I said, you've got Contender, Yamaha, Maverick, Sea-Doo, ABC Fine Wines and Spirits. So every time you go into an ABC store, you can thank them for you guys still being able to fish. You've got Rhineland Cutlery, Rodan, Duke Energy. Gosh, even the Florida Insider Fishing Report Rick Murphy, Angle Coolers, as I mentioned before, Starbright, Phillips and Jordan, AFCO, Real Tree Fishing. I mean, there are so many different organizations. You've got Abyss Battery, Alta Equipment, Live Target, one of my favorite, Power Pole, Calusa Cast Nets. There are so many individuals who have supported our organization and help us to continue to fight the fight that we do to allow recreational anglers the ability to continue to fish.
Speaking of the redfish restocking program, and I applaud those efforts. That's been going on for, about 5-6 years now, maybe longer, that you've been working with Duke Energy on that. Can you give us a feel for that return on investment for that program? Do we know what the success rate is, or have a good feeling of the success rate of those fish being released and surviving and moving around? Do we have any of those metrics yet?
So we're working on the metrics from that based on the larger fish that have been tagged and the recapture information from the larger Duke Energy fish that have been tagged. However, I can give you some reports from recreational anglers who have, in the areas where these fish have been released over the last several years, and the reports that I'm getting, the reports from over on the East Coast, up just south of Jacksonville in the St. Augustine area, and in southern Jacksonville, some of the anglers there have said, we never have caught that 12 to 14-inch redfish like we caught in the last year.
Right.
If you talk to anglers in the Sebastian area, they have never seen a resurgence of the number of redfish in the Sebastian area in that 14 to 16-inch class range. We've been releasing there for the last couple of years. Right. The same way over in much of Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay, in the northern end of Tampa Bay, where we've done some releases. Just so many different opportunities to hear recreational anglers saying what they've seen as an impressive change in the fisheries with the amount of fish they're seeing.
Now, are those fish, or all of those fish, are they getting a serialized tag so that if one is recaptured, we can have basically a rough idea of how much it has grown and how far it has traveled?
Yes. Those large fish that are being released both on the East and West Coast, the Adopt a Redfish program that was just put out in September, I believe it was, all of those 100 fish were tagged and released, and we will get information back from them on the East Coast. For the last several years on the West Coast, those Duke Energy larger fish, not the small, not the 8 to 12-inch fish, but those 25-inch fish were all tagged, and we're getting reports back from where they were caught, when they were caught, their size. We get the information once the angler reports that fish.
Sure. Do we have a rough idea how far those fish, what is their home range typically? I know redfish move around a lot more than sea trout do, but do we know, how many miles they may be traveling, or are they pretty much sticking to the same areas that they're released so that we know where to plant areas that may have holes in the population?
So one of the things that I can share with you is the research I know from the star-tagged redfish. So with the star-tagged redfish on the west coast of Florida, those are hatchery-reared redfish that are tagged and released. And the majority of those fish don't move very far from where they were released. In fact, we had a 2019 redfish just recaptured this year, and it was caught within a half a mile of where it had been released in 2019.
Interesting. Now, that size redfish, Leiza, how long does it take the hatchery to get them to that size? Is that...
So redfish will grow about a half an inch a month. Once they reach about that 19 to 20 inches, they slow down a little bit, but it's approximately a half an inch a month in the wild. However, in the hatchery, they pour the food to them, so they grow just a little bit faster.
What size they do when they do a conversion from male to female? Is that around 26, 27 inches? I mean, I was always led to believe from the research that I've done that the slot limit is basically set in place so that if you're going to harvest one, you're harvesting a male. You're generally not harvesting females. Do we know when that transition period happens?
You know, I am not a biologist, so I don't know that. I just recently heard that in the grouper species, it's once they reach that 30, it was supposedly once they reach that 30 to 32 inches, but I do not know in the redfish species.
Interesting. We have some mutual friends at the Maverick Boat Group. I know that they are a corporate partner for the CCA of Florida, and you told me some of the other ones. Who would you like to see join the CCA of Florida to help with these efforts?
You know, quite honestly, would love to see different types of partners in our organization. It doesn't just have to be from the fishing industry. I would love to see choice hotels involved. Organizations like Marathon, different organizations like Wawa, and places that benefit from our recreational anglers coming to the state of Florida and that benefit from lots of fish being caught, beautiful waters, and people spending time in Florida.
Right. It's huge. Last time I did research on it, it was 9.2 billion, but I've recently that it's up as much as 13 billion.
You know, there is so much money that is generated by the fishing industry, by travel, by hotel rooms, by different organizations. When someone comes into a town to fish, they're catching fish, they're eating dinner out, they're buying tackle. They're
buying gasoline, they're buying groceries, they're buying all kinds of things to support that effort.
You are right. You are right. And there's just so many different organizations that should have concern for our marine fisheries.
It's the lifeblood of the state's economy, in my opinion. I've done the research on other entities to see what their economic value was to our state, whether it was golf or citrus, and they all help. But compared to recreational fishing, big difference in numbers. What other conservation groups does the CCA of Florida work in concert with and consider to be critical partners?
We work closely with University of Florida and Whitney Labs. Mm-hmm. We work closely with Harbor Branch over on the East Coast, the Duke Mariculture Center. We are friendly with Bonefish Tarpon Trust and have information there. We work with Ducks Unlimited.
That's an interesting junction between the two. I would have never originally thought about Ducks Unlimited, but it does make sense.
Well, think about it. We worked closely with Ducks Unlimited on many of the STAs that are being established. What is the benefit of an STA? Grasses in the water. What feeds on grasses in the water? Ducks.
A lot of ducks.
Yeah. Who likes to hunt ducks? Duck hunters. Who preserves and helps to establish all of that? Ducks Unlimited. So we work with Ducks Unlimited. We work with a lot of the conservation organizations that are working on preserving our lands through the central corridor of the state of Florida, right, because of the fact that those lands directly affect our coastal waterways. if someone who is a homeowner in the center part of the state thinks that their septic tank or their spraying of herbicides on their pond and on their grasses doesn't make an impact on our fisheries, they're sorely mistaken. If we look at our state of Florida and what our underground aquifer system looks like, our waters all drain south. And it's a myriad of aquifer systems and lacy-looking limestone. And eventually, the state of Florida has to be cognizant of how the center part of the state affects our waterways.
I agree. What do you need to be watching as concerned citizens? Maybe, we're also discussing this as that really need to have some support going forward.
I think really we need to really keep our eyes peeled for some of the things that happen in the political arena, our legislators, our gubernatorial recommendations. And, a lot of the legislative issues are critical that we keep our eyes on. I think that paying attention to who is on our advisory panels for the Gulf and South Atlantic federal fishery panels, who our FWC commissioners are. I know those are things that we as an individual can determine, but we definitely can send emails and make sure that we keep an eye on what's going on. Other areas where I think we really need to be concerned are angler access. There are some areas where we have, like the Florida Keys and South Florida. There for a while, they were trying to close certain reefs and fishery areas to fishing because Goliath grouper spawned there. We were able to keep that from happening. We want to look at what the Rice's whale and the right whale, those initiatives are going on. There are so many different items that are on the horizon that can definitely affect our boating and our fishing industry. No motor zones and no take fishing areas. We just really have to be cognizant. And when these emails come out, don't just delete them from whatever organization it is. Be aware of what's going on in your community and around you. And I think the biggest thing for me is get engaged in something.
Right. Well, you brought up an interesting point, Leiza, about angler access, and I've questioned this for many years. There's an extra tax put on fuels that are purchased at marinas. That's one of the reasons why they're more expensive, to build ramps and things of that nature. When was the last time you saw a new boat ramp being installed? Where is those funds going? I have that.
Well, and these are the questions that we as individuals need to be engaged in. Go to your county commission meetings. Look at what's going to happen with your county. There are places. I live in Sarasota.
Which has just exploded over the years. I remember when it was hardly anything.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's insane.
But our 10th Street boat ramp on Sarasota Bay, we as concerned citizens had not been paying very close attention. They were talking about doing away with the 10th Street boat ramp and making it condominiums.
Again, where's all the gas excise tax going?
I mean, these are things that we really want to be very cognizant of as individuals. I mean, there are so many little things that slip under the radar that not our organization and many other organizations can't catch. But you do have local organizations that are paying attention to them. You have your Sarasota Waterkeepers, your Tampa Bay Waterkeepers. Right. All of these different groups are paying attention to what's going on. And so keep an eye on those things.
Yeah, if nothing, just send up a flare and make everybody aware of what is happening.
I know that CCA Florida, we're a national CCA is a state organization, but CCA itself is national. Florida is our own little entity. And the upcoming projects that we have are not just localized. They're the entire state of Florida. And you can find those projects coming up on our website. I mean, I mentioned the Delano Wiggins mangrove planting, but we've got Biscayne Bay seagrass restoration. We have a CCA Steenhatchee reef. We have Tomoka State Park, a living shoreline that we're in the future. We have the Pennicamp seagrass restoration project. We have a marine debris cleanup that we're in partnership with Ocean Aid 360 and NOAA. We have a Fort Lauderdale oyster ring project. We have a derelict vessel cleanup in Broward County. Charlotte County, we're deploying another offshore reef. I mean, and the list just goes on and on. Manatee County, we have a new reef. The Treasure Coast, we have a living dock project. Our Ducks Unlimited project is 3 potential habitat partners throughout the state that we're working on, just as I said, one of the organization. We have several panhandle habitat projects up there, reef projects. We have an oyster gardening project with St. James City.
That'll sound a bit handy.
Yeah. I mean, there are
I live here, so I know.
There are so many great projects that we have going on that if there's not something in your community, we can work on getting something in your community.
Well, that leads me to one of my questions. In addition to membership for headcount, as Captain Mike Anderson and I discussed on the latest Flats Nation Sound Bites, what does the CCA of Florida need to help keep this momentum going forward?
Engagement from corporate America, local companies, and individuals through whether it's partnerships. If you're an individual and you don't have the $40 to join as a member, you do not have to be a member in order to come out and participate in our conservation initiatives and our habitat restoration or our trash cleanups. We'd love for you to be a member. An easy way to become a member is to come to one of our local banquets. When you come to the local banquet, your membership is included with your ticket. You have a dinner, open bar, and you become a member. Plus, there are great raffles, auctions, and silent auctions. There are so many ways to support the organization. And, I've heard from individuals that all CCA does is throw banquets. But that's one of our ways of raising funds in order to put $9.2 million of habitat restoration work back into the local waters of Florida. When you drive around Mosquito Lagoon and you see those oyster bags that are all protecting the shorelines and the living shorelines, when you're in Tampa Bay, then you see Fantasy Island that has been restored with oysters. When you're in Charlotte Harbor and you're in Turtle Bay, you see the oysters there. When you're in Punta Rassa and you see the over 2 acres of oysters that are planted there. Think about CCA Florida. When you're in Fort Lauderdale and you're going offshore and you're seeing the reef systems out there that are being deployed and the ships that are being deployed. We've put 90 tons of oysters back into the water. We've deployed 45 artificial reefs. It's something that CCA Florida is doing not only for inshore anglers, but offshore anglers. We helped Congress introduce the Descending Device Bill and the Forage Fish Conservation Act. We've helped ban long lines for billfish and pelagic species on the east coast of Florida. We're working and have worked to ensure maximum access for red snapper. We're working on the grouper issue now. Heck, we made redfish and advocated for redfish to be a game fish, and now it's a game fish. It can no longer be commercially harvested.
Well, and I think we need to do or roll sea trout back into that same envelope.
I would agree with you. On the west coast of Florida, we've restocked 110,000 sea trout. That is just CCA's effort. That doesn't include the effort that Duke Energy has done. So there is so many different things that CCA has done. Plus, I think, in my opinion, one of the great initiatives that my STAR competition has brought not only awareness to CCA Florida since 2015 when we initiated STAR, we've really brought awareness to the organization, but we have awarded so far $900,000 in college scholarships to kids just for fishing over the summer.
Yeah, that's amazing. Everybody remembers the boats being given away and the trucks and all that kind of stuff, but I think they really seem to forget about that aspect, the scholarships for the kids.
I mean, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, the amount of scholarships awarded since 2015. But if you take into consideration the last 3 years, actually the last 2 years, CCA has also instituted a scholarship program where we do a week of education on conservation, and we have juniors and seniors put together a conservation project, and we award scholarships through that.
Oh, that's great.
That kicks us up over $1 million in scholarships.
That's great. For those who are interested in taking more of an active role, especially after listening to our show here, how can they volunteer to help the CCA of Florida? And really, what is needed most other than just memberships? How can they help?
Like I said, getting the word out about our organization, getting your hands dirty, getting your boots on the ground, planting mangroves, helping us deploy the oysters, and changing your mindset. Let's think about a sustainable way for us to continue to improve our fisheries. So many recreational anglers go out on the water and keep as much as they can when they catch fish. But change your mindset. Think about it. So today you go out and you catch your limit of redfish, your limit of snook, and your limit of trout. Keep what you're going to eat for dinner, because guess what that means? That means that you have to go fishing again and catch more fish in order to have another dinner.
That's right. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I kept a redfish. Because I remember when we hardly had any, especially when I spent all those years in the Tampa Bay area. I'm like, catch a redfish? I'm like, wow, we caught a red. And now, you can generally get into them with good frequency. And I still, thank you, buddy, and just put him back in the water. I can't find myself to do it anymore.
But I think throughout the state, not just in some of our good fishing areas, but I think all over the state, if we can get people to change their mindset, I think that is going to go a long way. Think about it before you go to spray weeds, pull weeds. Before you go to dump Clorox down your drain and it's going into your septic tank. If you're, just so many different things that we don't even think about that can affect the environment, because it doesn't just affect you there. It trickles down and all the way down. Make sure that when you're out in your boat, trash doesn't blow out of your boat. That's one of the big things that I'm so opposed to, is the amount of trash we have in our waterways. That's why in the STAR competition, We have a trash division. That's why we have trash cleanups all over the state. The tons of garbage that we are cleaning out of our local waterways is frightening.
I bet.
Get on our website, ccaflorida.org. Our events are there. Come to a banquet. Go to one of our habitat projects. Get engaged. Become a member. If you don't even have the time to go to anything, it's $40 to become a member, to get your voice heard, to say, I care.
Become part of the head count. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Well, Leiza, thanks for joining us today. I do appreciate it. Looking forward to doing it again soon. And you know how to reach me if you have something that needs to be emphasized or some more media coverage put upon it. We'd love to help in any way that we can.
Well, Dave, I appreciate what you do. We need more individuals like you who have that passion and that concern for our fisheries. There are so many people out there coming every day to the state of Florida to enjoy what we consider to be our privilege. It's not our privilege. We really need to be concerned about what is going on in our waterways and what's going into our waterways. So if you're listening, get yourself engaged. If it's not with CCA, find another organization that you would like to support and support them and make sure they're doing the right things.
Thank you again, Leiza. Great having you.
Have a great day.
And thanks again to our awesome guest, Leiza Fitzgerald of the CCA of Florida, for helping to bring us up to date on their vast conservation and water quality efforts here in the great state of Florida and how you can help. Speaking of helping at a CCA mangrove planting or other event, this so you don't get roasted or eaten up as badly by the bugs, the newer Flats Nation technical wear to help you stay in the fight or just to enjoy the great outdoors has received some very positive reviews and is now ready to ship. You can review them in the various blend-in colors on our site simply by clicking on the link at the top title bar for our store. The team and I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and many blessings to you and your family for the new year. Well, we hope you enjoyed our show today and found it both educational and entertaining at the same time. If you or your company would like to join the team on Flats Nation for a podcast or other coverage, feel free to drop us a quick note at info@flatsnation.com. And now, here's the rest of the song to run the skiff back home with. Tight lines and God bless.